Good morning and welcome to the show. This is Choosing Life, Addiction and Recovery, the radio show devoted to your mental, spiritual, and emotional healing and rejuvenation. I'm your host, Suzi Marsh from the Alliance Center. You may want to grab a pen and paper in case you're interested in phone numbers. We give them out at the break and then again at the end of the show. So I want to start today by telling you a little bit about my guest who is in the studio with us, a famous person in the studio here in Atlanta. Cool. Debbie Ford, who is a facilitator of the shadow process and who's an author. Her latest book is The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, Reclaiming Your Power, Creativity, Brilliance, and Dreams. She is a consultant, a teacher, a coach, and an integral faculty member of the Chopra Center for Wellbeing in La Jolla, California. Debbie's work has opened the heart of thousands, bringing them the gift of self-love and emotional freedom. Debbie's a graduate of JFK University with a degree in psychology and an emphasis in consciousness studies. The shadow process, I want to tell you about this because I'm sure many of you will be interested in it, is a spiritually based emotional healing 3-day intensive workshop. It will guide you to reclaim your power, your creativity, your brilliance, and your dreams. It will open your heart to yourself and to others and will alter your relationship with the world forever. So we're going to be talking with Debbie today about her book and about the shadow process. And welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thanks, Suzi. Glad to be here.
Why don't we start by having you say a little bit about your personal history that kind of brought you to this process?
Well, yeah, because I didn't want to grow up and be the shadow lady. It just kind of happened by accident. I had been a drug addict for 15 years, and then I was addicted to many other things, people and men and money and sugar, and Sara Lee brownies was my thing, actually. I used to eat a whole pan. And when I got into recovery, only after 5 treatment centers. It only took me 5 times. I was a little slow. I started praying, and I thought, if people can heal themselves of cancer, I can certainly heal myself of drug addiction. And I didn't want to suffer. I wanted to really have a full life and be healed. And so I set on this path, and I always say I spent 5 years and too much money traveling around the country, going to different seminars, lectures, codependency treatment. I would lock myself up. Wherever somebody said, this is really horrible, I would go, thinking that that's what I needed to heal myself. And, I jumped off mountains and did, acupuncture and Buddhist retreats and Sufi retreats and A Course in Miracles, and had thousands of affirmation tapes that I would listen to every night saying, I'm happy, I'm kind, I'm loving, I'm sweet. And what I realized after this 5 years is when I closed my eyes in my meditation, I was still not happy with myself. I was still not okay. And there were still parts of me, even though I had changed all my friends and changed what I thought about and my values, there were still parts I didn't love. And I thought, God would not create us so that we don't love ourselves. There's something wrong here. And one of my last attempts, I went to another seminar, and it was a leadership intensive actually given by a woman that lives here, Jan Smith, in Atlanta. She didn't live in Atlanta then, but she lives in Atlanta now. She's a great woman. And she was giving this intensive, and in the middle of this intensive, I was standing up. It was a video course, and there was people there from CNN. It was more like a business course, and they said, what are you up to in the world? And I said, well, I want to bring self-esteem into the school system because, of course, I had no self-esteem. So I thought, I got to teach other people. Why didn't I get that in school? Why didn't they teach me that? What a concept. They taught me all this useless information. But they couldn't teach me how to like myself, or that I was okay. I remember when I was in the treatment center, the thing that blew my mind the most was this woman came in and she said, I'm a good mother and I'm a wonderful wife. And I'm a great, whatever she said. She just went on and she said all these great words about herself. And, of course, I sat there and thought, what a conceited witch. What is her problem? And then after about 20 minutes of talking about her, she said, I'm here to teach you about self-love. And she was telling us that it was actually okay to say all these nice things about yourself, where if you met me, I could just tell you immediately the 10 worst things about myself so that you wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, in this course, this woman looked at me, and in the middle of my talk about self-esteem, she said, you're a bitch. And I thought, well, I know that. How does she know? Because I had just spent all this time and money kind of covering up that part of me and trying to get rid of it and trying to destroy it. And, I had this whole new act, what can I do for you? You want my money, you want my clothes, whatever you want, I'll give it to you just so you won't find out about me. And in this conversation, she said, well, tell me what's good about that part of yourself. And I said, there's nothing good about it. It's hurt other people. I used to scream at people and, blow people's head off for the littlest thing. And I just told her all the things that were wrong. And she said, come on, you got to tell me there's got to be something good about being a bitch. I hope I can say that on this radio station. Great.
Oh, it's all right. I don't know if you can. The 3 people listening, they might get upset.
No, we all have that. Anyway, the thing that really blew my mind is she said to me, let me ask you something. If you were remodeling a house and you were, 5 weeks late and $20,000 over budget, do you think it might help you to be a little bitchy? And I thought, yes. And at the time I was in the retail business, and she said, when you have to return merchandise and they don't want to take it, does it help you to be a little forceful and a little, bitchy? And all of a sudden this light went off. It was like, it wasn't about getting rid of these parts, because you can't get rid of them. Anybody who's tried has failed, but it was about transforming it. And then she didn't say these words, but basically what I came to that, either you're going to use it or it's going to use you. And anything that you don't love about yourself, that you can't embrace about yourself, uses you. You have no choice about whether you're going to act it out, because this is a spiritual universe, and God created us to be whole. And to be whole today, we know, is to be everything, to possess every human trait within us. Deepak Chopra has really brought that to the forefront, and he says we're the saint and the sinner and the divine and the diabolical. But any of us that are truthful also know that we're the weak and the strong. We've been strong at certain times in our life, and we've been weak, and we've been insecure, and we've been secure, and that, we decide as children that we should be one thing or the other, because that's how we're socialized. There are good people, and if you're a good person, you're honest. What else are you? When you're courageous, trustworthy. Yeah, and all of us know we've been untrustworthy. All of us know that we've been loving, but we've also been hateful. And what happens is I found out that we disassociate with these parts because we think they're bad. And then it turns that we feel shameful about who we are. Because if, I have a son, he's 4 years old, and when he was 2 years old, we went in. I came home one day from work, and I asked Bo, did you get your hair washed? And of course he said yes. And later on that night, the nanny said, and he wouldn't let me wash his hair. So he lied. And if I come to a party and there's 4 of us, and when there's 4 cookies, at 2 years old, I say, Bo, how many cookies do you want? Guess what he's going to say?
4.
4. And if I ask him, is it Bo time or mommy time? What's he going to say?
Bow time.
Bow time. So we know that he's selfish. We know that he's greedy, that's part of our humanity. And it's not about getting rid of them. It's about seeing what their use is and integrating them and appreciating them, and knowing that as long as the scales are out of balance, whether we're just trying to be loving and we're avoiding being hateful, whenever the scales are out of balance, we are out of balance. And it's about embracing the totality of our humanity. And when I realized that, it changed my life. It changed my recovery. It changed my thinking, because I no longer had to talk you into my act. I no longer had to convince you that I am the most trustworthy person on the planet, or the most selfless person. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that, because I know that it's really important. If you want me to shut up, just tell me.
No, Debbie, don't.
Because I could just talk and talk
Go
and talk.
Go for it. I love it.
Last year I wound up in the hospital. And I was like, why am I sick? Why am I in the hospital? And what I realized is that I needed to be more selfish. That I was so on the other side. I didn't realize that I hated being selfish, so I was trying to be so selfless that I was touring and I was lecturing, and people would come up to me after my lectures and, can you help me? And I have this problem, and I'd be up 4 hours later processing people. And I have a young son, and I was exhausted, and I needed, that selfishness was in me to say, you know what?
That's excellent.
I can't do it right now. I need to take care of myself. Read my book and call me in 30 days. And that was such a breakthrough because, I was taught you've got to be giving, you've got to get out of yourself. So I just went to the other side of the scale, and I was so out of balance that my body broke down. And that's what we really teach you about at the Chopra Center, is what does it take to be in harmony? What does it take to be in balance? Because we not only carry around all this physical toxicity that we get from eating garbage and, stuffing ourselves with bad food, but we carry around this emotional toxicity from when we're very young, and anybody in recovery knows that because that's what they're dealing with, their emotional toxicity. And it's about really getting in there and detoxifying our emotions and understanding that there is no part of us, none, no matter what you're thinking, that is not okay, that it doesn't deserve love. In Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh said, or God said, through Neil, that white is not the absence of color. White is the inclusion of every color. And that love is not the absence of anger, greed, lust, or covertness, but that love is the inclusion of all human emotion. And as human beings, our job is to find love for what we have been told or have decided ourselves are the unlovable parts of ourselves.
Oh, that's great. That is wonderful. Well, I'm just thinking devil's advocate, and I know that you've heard this many times, so some people listening may think, so I should love this part of myself that could be abusive to my child. I should love this part of myself that could be mean to my partner, my spouse, etc. So how do you translate that so that they could understand?
That's so great. I love that. Thank you for saying that. So as long as something is in the shadow, in the dark side, it's underneath the conscious. It's out of the light of our consciousness. So I always use the analogy of this. Imagine taking a beach ball. You push a beach ball underwater. So we're trying to get rid of this. We hate this part of ourselves. We're pushing it underwater. Well, you know how much energy, first of all, it takes to hold that beach ball underwater? And then what happens the minute you take the pressure off?
Right.
It pops up. It pops up and hits you. And that's what the shadow does. It pops up and it destroys your life. And if your anger and your rage are stuffed down there, guess what? Somebody's going to say something to you. That's what road rage is all about. It's going to tick you off, and your emotional toxicity is going to pop up and come out in some abusive way. Where this process, a process in the dark side of the light chasers, is about unconcealing, owning, and embracing. It's about not acting it out, because once we have put love and light onto our own meanness, onto our own abusiveness, find out, and that's what the book teaches people, there's processes of how do I go in and find out what this part of me is trying to teach me. What is the gift of it? What does that part of me need? What do I need to give it? And in my seminars, almost everybody will find out that their most hated parts need love, need appreciation, need compassion, that they have been there to warn you. Your rage, your anger is a gift to you. And most people's real power is buried in that anger. And if you do anger work, I teach people in the book to, get a bat and pillow. And when you feel angry, instead of beating up on somebody else, which only makes it worse and makes it grow, get down on your hands and knees, take that bat, and release that emotion. If you're at your computer and somebody plugs you in, and we should talk about why you get plugged in, though, sit down and write a hate letter. You don't have to give it to the person. Just know that your feelings need to be expressed. You need to grant yourself permission in a healthy way by whether you're screaming in a pillow, because otherwise you will keep abusing not only yourself, but you will be abusing other people.
So it's kind of like if someone says, well, when you say, Debbie, that I should love that side of myself, it's not loving it, allowing it to act out. It's when you don't love it that it acts out without your knowledge or without your agreement or consent. And when you ignore it, then it just gets bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
So by reclaiming it, it's more like, well, you already said this, but for listeners, it's metabolizing and integrating that part of yourself and expressing it in a healthy way.
Where you get to use it instead of it using you.
Well, I have a little story I want to tell you a little bit later, but so healing parts of yourself, especially or only the dark side, may have led to addiction, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, I feel like this is the thing that we need to learn because we need to teach our children, because the message that all addicts have is there's something wrong with me. I'm not okay. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. And it's trying to, whether we're eating or drinking or doing drugs or working, whatever our addiction is, we're trying to push down those beach balls. We're trying to hold all those unlovable, unokay parts. If I say to my son, you're a liar and it's not okay to lie, well, he's 2 years old. He knows he lied. So he's got to say, this part of me is not okay, and disassociate, right? Then I say, you're being selfish. It's not okay to be selfish. Take that part of you. Robert Bly, the poet and author, said we spend our first 20 years of our lives taking parts of ourselves and putting in an invisible bag behind us.
I read it in your book. It's excellent.
Yeah.
And then...
Go ahead, you say it.
Well, not as well as you, and then you spend the next 10, 20, or 30 years reclaiming all those little parts you threw back there. Is that right?
Exactly. Trying to reclaim all these parts of ourselves, because to be whole is to be healed, and to be healed is to be human. And most of the people I find in recovery in some way are embarrassed, feel shameful, feel upset about their humanity. And one of the big concepts in my book that I really explain is a concept that it's the new holographic theory of the universe. Meaning, for those of you who haven't heard it, if you take a hologram, like on your credit card or your driver's license, and you cut it into 1,000 tiny little pieces, you will see, if you shine a particular kind of laser on any one of those pieces, you will see the entire picture in that tiny little piece. And that today they're saying that humans, we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. We are a piece. Within our DNA is this picture of the entire world. And in that theory, there is nothing that we are not. There is nothing that we can see. There is nothing that we can conceive that we are not.
If you just tuned in, we are speaking with Debbie Ford, who wrote The Dark Side of the Light Chasers and was recently at the Whole Life Expo. And we're talking about her process, which is to reclaim the shadow part of ourselves, which many of you are familiar with Jung and many other psychologists. And it's work that a lot of people like light chasers sometimes avoid because we're supposed to hide that part. So her book is an excellent way. She has exercises in there, an excellent way to try to find those parts of yourself that you disconnect from and disclaim, I guess. So, Debbie, I really like the Ken Wilber quote in your book that you talked about.
My favorite
projection.
Quote.
It's excellent.
So the Ken Wilber quote, and this is very good to know because we're always confused. Is this my stuff or is this your stuff, Well, this is how you know if this is kind of the good news and the bad news. Okay? So if you are informed by somebody's behavior, you're just receiving information. Like, she spit, she's disgusting, she's lazy, he's angry, he's selfish, he's insensitive, he's prejudiced. Just receiving information like anything else, it's probably not a projection. Excuse me. If you are affected in any way, affected emotionally, pointing your finger, judging, stirred up about somebody else, God, he's angry. He's so insensitive. I can't believe my father. It is a projection of a disowned aspect of yourself. And my book is about how do I take back that so that person has no effect on my life. See, most of us run around and the outer world controls our entire life. Because if you cut in front of me, I have to be upset, flipped out, calling you all kinds of names, right? Because I have no compassion for myself when I cut in front of somebody, even if I'm doing it by accident. That part's not okay with me. I have a great little story.
Is it good? We have like 3 minutes on this side.
This will be a short one.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm used to these 3-minute marks because I talk so much. But I had a girl come up to me after my lecture the other night. And she says, I understand what you're saying. I know that we're everything, but my father's a racist bigot, and I'm not a racist bigot, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she says, and my father's always upset with me and always lecturing me because I only go out with European men, and he doesn't like European men. And so I said to her, what kind of person would only go out with European men? And she said, somebody who's a bigot. So we think our psyches can't distinguish between a number 1 racist and a number 10 or a number 2
Right.
idiot or number, and that's what we have to learn, that, even if we're doing it to ourselves, like somebody will say, I hate that person, they're a child abuser, I'm not like that, they're abusive. And then I say, how do you treat yourself? Do you wake up in the morning and say, hi, beautiful, I love you? Do you nurture yourself when you make a mistake? Do you say, it's okay to make a mistake? Most of us are abusive to ourselves, and there's no difference whether we're abusive to the inner child in us or the outer child.
Well, we're almost to the end of the first part of our show today. And again, you're listening to Debbie Ford, who is the author of, where's my book? Here it is. The Dark Side. I love this title, by the way. My boyfriend was going, wow, that sounds so cool. The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And she also was at the Whole Life Expo talking about her shadow process, which is a 3-day intensive workshop where you learn about how to reclaim these parts of ourselves and really transform self-hate into self-love. I don't know if you can talk about this in the time that we have left, but I was thinking about a client that I worked with years ago who idealized, worshipped one of her parents, worshipped. And I noticed over and over and over that this idealization was such an illusion, and it really covered up just so much anger and rage that was totally underground. Do you see that, or I don't know if you can speak to that?
All the time. I think we should talk about it when we get back from the break. But people project. She was projecting her light side onto one of her parents. So she couldn't see who they were because she had given them all those things that she's saying, how great they are, how sensitive, how sweet. I had a man yesterday telling me how loyal his ex-girlfriend is. She left him for another guy. Right? She's got she's always jerking him around, but he's telling me that she is so sweet. I said, no, you are so sweet. You have given that part of you away. And the next half, I think, projections are great.
Right. This is a really fun interview, Debbie. I'm so glad we got to do this in person instead of on the phone.
Yeah, me too.
So your shadow process workshops, just really briefly, they help people move from reacting with negativity to increasing their acceptance and their love, right?
Yes.
Do you want to just say a little? Are you doing one in Atlanta?
I'm not doing one in Atlanta. You got to come to La Jolla, but I promise you it's worth your time and money. I promise you.
We just need to have somebody sponsor you to come here, Debbie.
Yeah, we all need a vacation. We
That's
do it at
true.
the Deepak Chopra Center, and it's just such a organic, natural healing. Really, all of us deserve to have
Well,
that.
Debbie, you came to one of the ugliest weekends in Atlanta, so it's usually gorgeous here, but not like La Jolla, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, and I'm a West Coast. I'm an East Coast girl originally,
Oh, really?
And now I live in the West Coast, and I have to say
I'm
prejudiced.
envious.
I love it.
I'm sure it is absolutely gorgeous there. Well, we're coming almost to the end of the first half of our show. And again, if you've been listening, we're talking with Debbie Ford, and we're talking about her new book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And I want to remind my listeners that when we return, we will be exploring this topic in depth, and Debbie is going to tell us about the 3 greatest mysteries, which, by the way, I love that. And we'll talk more.
You read my book. You got all the best quotes out of it.
And we'll talk about more in depth about reclaiming your shadow, including what we just mentioned, reclaiming the light side of yourself that you may deny also. So Debbie's number in California is 619.
699.
Oh, they changed the area code?
699. No. It's 619-699-8999. 699.
Well, that's easy.
8999. Area code 619. I always give out the wrong number. That number in the back of my book doesn't work anymore.
Okay,
they
good.
Lied.
619-699-8999 if you're interested in the shadow process. Of course, if you would like to obtain her book, it's available at any bookstore. And
Phoenix, I'm going to sign books and leave them there at Phoenix Dragon.
By the time this airs, you will have missed her book signing, but she'll be at the Phoenix and Dragon. And
I'm going to sign books and leave them there.
Excellent. So you can get a signed copy.
Yeah.
So this is Suzi Marsh from the Alliance Center. Stay tuned. We will explore this topic more in depth when we come right back. 3, 2, 1, mark. Welcome back. You are listening to Choosing Life, Addiction and Recovery. I'm your host, Suzi Marsh from the Alliance Center. If you just joined us, I'd like to remind you that we will give out the phone numbers again at the end of the show. So grab your pen and paper. And we have been talking with Debbie Ford, who is an author, a consultant, a teacher, a coach, and an integral, I can't say that word, integral.
Just forget that word. Wipe that word out.
Faculty member of the Chopra Center for Wellbeing in La Jolla, California. And she is talking about the shadow process, which is a 3-day intensive workshop that she conducts, and maybe one day someone will bring her to Atlanta to do it. And also about her book, which is The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Great title. So we were just talking about going more in depth about a couple of issues. And again, we are going to tell you the 3 greatest mysteries that Debbie talks about. But first, let's talk a little bit more about projecting the light shadow, which is all these positive aspects. She said we could talk a little bit more about that on this side.
Well, let me just explain projection for those people who aren't familiar with it. So projection, Freud said projection is a defense mechanism of the ego. It's the way that we can't see ourselves. You know, the 3 greatest mysteries of the world are air to birds.
Air to birds.
Water to fish.
I love it.
And man unto himself. Because man, as a human, you can walk into a room with 1,000 people and you can view every single person in that room, but you cannot view yourself. You need a mirror to see yourself. And God created this universe so magically that the way that we see ourselves is by looking at other people. And what I love about you and what turns me on about you is a part of me, whether I'm aware of it or not, my light shadow, it's a part of me that I am seeing in you that I would love. I'd either love more of it or I already know I have it and I love that. And on the dark side, if I see something in you that annoys me, then it annoys me about myself. That's what it's telling me. Or if I see something that is disgusting, you do something that's disgusting, it's because I would be disgusted if I did it to myself. And if I hate you, it's because I hate those parts of myself. So the universe and how we are designed as humans fundamentally is that we cannot see ourselves. We can only see ourselves through other people. And I promise you that if you understand this information at a very, very deep level, you will start to understand that you are not only seeing yourself, you're always talking to yourself. Because you are going to give advice, especially if you're in the program. It's really great because people are always giving advice, what people should do to get better. Just write down the advice that you're giving to your friends. And then instead of you saying you should, put I should, and you can really understand what you need to take care of yourself.
You know, this is so true. I can't remember who said this, but I noticed once earlier in my own process that I would look in the mirror a lot, and I was thinking, you know, why do I keep looking in the mirror? And then somewhere later, I really wanted the answer, so I guess I asked for God somehow to give it to me. But I read something about, you know, man, similar quote, man, you know, keeps looking in the mirror, but you look the same as you did an hour ago, but I keep looking in the mirror. It's like trying to really, I'm not doing a good job of describing this, but trying to really find myself or see something in myself. That was a perfect example to me. But I have to say this other thing. We were talking on the break about a radio show host that I won't mention, who I almost wrecked my car one time, laughing so hard and screaming and raging in my old convertible in Rome, Georgia, when I first turned on the radio, started listening to this person. I mean, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I couldn't believe the things that were coming out of her mouth. But
so
okay, so yeah, go ahead.
So what kind of person would say what she said?
Witch.
Witch.
Self-centered. I already know I have this. Self-centered, I hate to be told, but go ahead. Self-centered, narcissistic, grandiose.
Okay, a grandiose, narcissistic, self-centered. Now let me ask you something, Susie. Do you love yourself when you're being grandiose, narcissistic, or self-centered?
No, I don't.
Yeah, so God is showing you. This is an opportunity because God is showing you that you're not loving these parts. Let's do this, though, because this will help people really understand the process. Okay. So the first part is to unconceal it. So you unconcealed it by seeing it in somebody else. Okay, you hate this. You've got to identify it as a trait. The second part is to be able to own it or accept it. So for you, that's kind of easy. You can say, yeah, you've seen where you've been like that, right?
And probably spent at least 10 years working very hard to admit those qualities in myself, working very hard to admit them.
Right. So you finally could see that you have done that, you have been that, but you're at the place where that's only the second step. You own it,
right?
But you still hate it. and the part that will change your life, because that woman has control over you. If we put her on right now, you'd got to go nuts, right?
Yeah, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, but still, we give our power away.
I know.
But let's find the gift of these parts, because if we can find the gift, then other people can start to see to find the gift. So tell me...
Well, I got a great example.
Okay.
You'll love it. I used to do stand-up comedy. I mean, how to walk out on stage and think you're going to make people laugh takes grandiosity, narcissism. I mean, energy to really put into it yourself and to think you're funny. So that's true. That is a gift in it.
So that's the gift. That it gave you the courage to go do something, right? Because it's a protection. Our absorbed part of us really protects us sometimes. We need to do that because we can't take care of ourselves. So, but if you could appreciate that it gave you the courage, because what do you try to be now? What's the opposite of narcissistic?
Loving and thinking of other people's feelings, which took training, really did take training.
Okay, but you work hard. You work hard to become those things. And do you love yourself when you're loving?
Yeah, but probably not. I think it's not 100% real.
No, but you probably, that's what you want to be.
Oh, yeah, right. I do like that. Yeah,
you
definitely.
like that when you're loving,
right.
and you like that when you're compassionate.
You're right. I get it.
Right? So what's driving you, and that's what we have to understand, because the shadow is always driving us, whether we're aware of it or not. So people ask me, why do I want to find out about this? I'm like, why wouldn't you? Because it's running your life.
Right.
You might as well go in and understand the mechanism. So, for example, if you don't want to be narcissistic, you will work hard to become the opposite of that. If you don't want to be self-absorbed, you're going to work hard to become selfless, and those are the parts of you that you actually love. So that gift of those parts, of having those, is that they allow us to choose these opposites, to become what we really want to be.
That's
but then
true.
we hate the part that's actually driving us. Want me to tell you my idiot story? No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I also noticed one of the things when I've spent a lot of time really working on that issue for myself, and I mean, I can say I could have been a carbon copy, and I'm not kidding, of this person. So I did spend a lot of time, but one of the things that I noticed is that those traits also allowed me to have sometimes a sense of authority that really helped. If somebody was in crisis, I was working with a client, they could go, oh God, I can really trust her. She knows what she's saying. So it gave me a sense of, they could trust me and feel secure. Okay, this is really going to work. I can relax now. So that was also one of the other positive things. There was another one, but it just flew out of my brain. So go ahead and tell your idiot story, which I read. I liked it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's what we have to understand, that all of these parts that we hate are actually giving us something. And until we can embrace the gift, because accepting it means no difference. People say, well, I know I'm that. It actually makes no difference at all to know. I mean, maybe it feels a little better in your mind. But as long as, because energetically, when somebody says, my buttons get pushed, we do have buttons, and your buttons do get pushed. We have energetic buttons. If you imagine having 100 buttons across your chest, and any part of you that you're okay with, any part of your humanity, has a cover plate over it. Those electrical outlets that are totally covered.
Right.
No energy can come out of them.
Right.
The parts of ourselves that we're not okay with, that we haven't embraced, have energy. And that what happens is, and that's why we keep attracting the same kind of people or the same incidents, is energetically it shoots out and it plugs into somebody else with that hook. So if I can't be with my anger and I pretend like I'm not angry, I will keep attracting angry people around me in order to mirror back that part of myself. If I can embrace and then fall in love or have compassion for that part of me that's angry, then I no longer will attract that. I'll be able to put a cover plate. But what allows you to energetically shift yourself only is embracing it, really appreciating, really understanding that this part of my humanity is the other side of the seesaw. And if you're being so selfless that you end up in the hospital because you can't be selfish, then it's not okay. Or you're so generous that you can't be a little cheap to save money for your kids' college.
Right.
It's always, and it's about getting to that balance, to understanding that.
And what I was thinking is working so hard for so many years on kind of letting go of that character defect and trying to understand other people's feelings, et cetera, is that I went to the other extreme, which might be why she would make me so angry. Like you just described, either ending up in the hospital or somehow not standing up for myself when I could stand up for almost anything when I was more of a witch, but
Right.
so it seems like I went to the other extreme to
Right.
overcompensate instead of to balance it or integrate it, like you described, kind of metabolizing that part of myself. Does that make sense?
Right, absolutely. And that's what all of us do. We go from one extreme to the other. We're either acting it out or we're trying to overcompensate for this quality that's there. And God cannot remove it. We can embrace it and it will integrate and become a natural part. And that's how He'll remove it. But that it's ever going to go away, it's part of your humanity.
Right.
And to understand that part, when it's listened to, because we have these voices, we can go inside, and we were talking about it earlier. There's a process in the book that I love. It's from psychosynthesis, which teaches you, the answers are within. They really are within. And that process teaches you to go in and dialogue with these parts and find out what their gift is. I had a woman come to see me the other night, a friend of mine, who, if we interviewed everybody would say she's an angel. She's an angel. She's dying inside. She has illnesses because she can't be mean, she has to be so kind to everybody. So if you call her up and you say, do you want to go to the movies? And she doesn't want to go, guess what she's going to say?
Yes.
And if you ask her, can I use your house? Can I use your car? Can you lend me $10,000? Guess what she's going to say? Yes. And she's always, because she can't embrace mean. And because she's hated that mean part, what keeps showing up is people are being mean to her.
Oh, right.
And she would say, I'm not mean. If you say I'm not something,
right,
that is the red light. I mean, that is the red light. And when we closed her eyes and we saw, I said, what is the gift? And she said, what came up is protection. That part is trying to protect her.
Exactly.
But she has hated it. And when you hate some part of yourself, it turns into dis-ease, disease, whether it's addiction, whether it's cancer, whether it's whatever the problem is, some out of balance.
I do a lot of psychosynthesis with my clients. I tell them it's, inner child healing, the inner child work. But I was just thinking how frustrating it is with managed care. They want you to go down to 45 minutes. Within 30 minutes, you're right there where you need to do the dialogue. It's like I end up doing an hour and a half all the time. So psychosynthesis to me, and we talked about earlier, is what's kind of life-changing and has been incredible in my personal life and also professionally. We probably have like less than 10 minutes or so. And again, I was thinking about some of the parts of your book that I loved and some of the interviews that I was reading. Maybe we should say a little bit more about psychosynthesis and subpersonalities. I don't think we've really talked about subpersonalities.
In the light shadow.
Okay.
Well, subpersonalities, that's the process we were just talking about, the subpersonalities, the psychosynthesis, where you close your eyes, in conversations with God. God says, if you do not go within, you go without. And this is a process to really teach you to go within, learn to meet these parts of you, as scary as you might feel they are. Once you meet them, there's a process in the book that you can just tape. You can get a tape recorder and you can tape it yourself, and you can learn to go inside and meet these. And his whole theory is that anything that we are identified with, I am angry, I am mean, I am insensitive, I am cheap, has control over us. And anything that we can disidentify with, we can have control. So the process is to name these parts, like angry Alice or resistant Rita or know-it-all Nick or nasty Nick, whatever it is, to name them and then to dialogue with them. And in that way we get to disidentify. Instead of it being, I am cold, I can talk to cold Clara, and she can tell me what that part of me needs to be whole. What are they trying to teach me, and what does it need to be whole?
It's so funny. People don't really believe that it happens until they experience it. And, it doesn't even take like 10 minutes for them to get there. And they're going, oh, well, her face is turning towards me. And people are like, I can't do that. What are you talking about? I have to tell you this little story. I worked in a codependency treatment center in Ohio that was fabulous. It was really wonderful, which is probably why it shut down, because insurance wasn't going to pay for what we did, which was everything was experiential, visualization, sculpture, anger work, all that. Anyway, one of the most wonderful therapists there was the daughter of a minister. She was very spiritual, very loving, recovering codependent person. And so whenever she would work in the group, I would always listen and do my own work internally. She did this gorgeous imagery that you probably actually have in your book of we're going to go meet the dark side of ourselves. And she built it up. And then you walk down these 8 steps. And I saw, this horrible monster. And so then the next part of the imagery is to touch or embrace that monster. The second I did it, it was my inner child. It was this little girl part of me that I've been working with for a long time. Instant, like you said in your book, instantly a light went on and it was like, love. Okay. All those parts of me, the monster parts, are this little girl. It was a profound experience.
That is so great. And I do have meeting your shadow visualization in there that you can tape and do for yourself. And that, when we bring anything to the light of our consciousness, when we bring love to anything, and that's our jobs as spiritual beings, is not to love. When I first started working with Deepak, I did a training for his staff, and they all got transformed the next day, and he was so excited, and he asked everybody to he asked me to come and tell him what I did, and I said, I just found out what people hated about themselves, and then I showed them how to love it. And he said to me, that's unbelievable. He couldn't believe how people shaved, people's hair changed. I mean, people's whole, their whole body language changed. And I said, we know if we're authentic, if we can be our authentic self, the good and the bad, which actually I had learned from him, which was so funny, this holographic theory.
Cool.
And he said, Debbie, do you know what enlightenment is? And I said, no. And he said, enlightenment is to be able to say, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that. That which I see in you, I see in myself. If I have compassion for it in me, I will have compassion for it in you. If I love myself, I will love you. And that is the key to enlightenment. And we are trained to say, I'm not that, I'm not like that, I'm not that. That's how we're socialized. So it goes so innately to say, somebody walks up to you and you go, you're a liar. And you go, yeah, I'm a liar. Instead of, I'm not a liar, don't call me a liar. And those buttons are the ones that need to be healed so that we can become whole. And then we get to, the subtitles of the book is reclaiming your power, your creativity, your brilliance, and your dreams. Because, Suzi, I am living proof, because that's what I did. I mean, I am living a dream that was so far beyond me. Even that I wrote a book I can't even spell, I can't even write a correct grammatically English sentence, but then I found out that there's editors. So it's like if you have a dream on the light shadow, I know we don't have much time, but on the light shadow is that we have given away our power. We have given away our brilliance. Look at people that you admire right now, the books that you're reading, the tapes that you're listening to, and write down what you love about these people. Do you love that they're articulate? Do you love that they're spiritual? Do you love that they're loving, that they're sweet, that whatever it is? Because that's you. I always take people, I sometimes travel with Deepak, and he'll give a lecture, and I'll say, now tell me what you love about him. And I'll get 100 different words, because everybody's describing themselves, the part of themselves that they have not embraced totally. So the only way we can see it, if you want to find out who you are at your highest, if you are whole and at your highest, just write down what those people are doing and what you love about them. And you will find it in yourself. And that is the most important thing I can tell you. When I got into recovery, the first person I really admired was Shirley MacLaine. And it wasn't because she was an actress. It was because she had written Out on a Limb. She was living in California. She was meditating on the beach and doing yoga. Now, I lived in Florida. I didn't meditate. I didn't do yoga. And I couldn't write a book. And she was lecturing around the world. And today I have that life, even as far as I live in, near the beach in California. So we can find out what our dreams are, and if we can see it, we can have it. It's there. If we don't fulfill our dreams, it's not because God didn't want us to. It's because we didn't want us to. And when we understand that we spend all our energy pointing our fingers at other people, just turn around. I love that Buddhist tradition where you point your hand out and you say, you are cranky. You're lazy. You have one finger, just watch, you have one finger pointing out at that person, and you have 3 fingers pointing back at yourself.
That is great. That is great.
That is like the truest statement. I mean, it's kids say it takes one to know one. It does take one to know one on both sides.
Right.
And that it's okay because there's nothing that you have that I don't have. And when you understand the holographic view, which I think in the book it makes it really, really simple to understand why we have it, how we have it, and I wanted to call my book The Moron's Guide to Enlightenment because
That is great. I wish you did.
Yeah, because it's simple. There were so many books I really couldn't understand. I was like, what are they talking about? And why can't they just say that in English? And I think the reason why The Gift of My Stupidity is my book, really, because I always call myself a brilliant moron, because I'm like one of the smartest people I know, and I'm one of the stupidest, because you can give me all those books on the shadow. I'm like, what are they talking about? Why can't they just make it simple? And so I feel like the gift of my stupidity is I've been able to make a book that people really relate to. People can really understand it.
Well, I got to say this on the air. I've interviewed a lot of people that are very famous and that are so inaccessible. So inaccessible, so cold, and talk on the air about love. And as soon as we're off the air, they're a totally different person. Debbie is exactly what she talks about in her book. Very loving, very genuine, just easy to be with, doesn't take herself too seriously, which is a quality I find many stars to have lost on their way kind of up the climb. So I just wanted to say that so that everybody could hear it, because she is
Thank
one
you,
of those
but I'm also
people.
a mean, nasty bitch. So just so you know.
Right. So I think she is one of those people who does live what she says. And The Dark Side of the Light Chasers is a way for you, the book by Debbie Ford, is a way for you to understand how she became that way and how you can become that way. Debbie, we probably have like 3 minutes. So I was thinking of, I just want to say this quote because we say it all the time in the program: what we resist persists. And we've been talking about that throughout the interview, and how denying this part of ourselves just persists and gets bigger and bigger. Just briefly, not too much time, but maybe we could talk about how victims of abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, end up with a partner or in a life where they have this compulsion repetition over and over and over. Do you want to touch on that?
Yes, because it's just exactly what the book talks about. Energetically, see, because most people that were abused then end up abusing themselves. Don't you see it? Over and over, they abuse themselves by walking themselves through the same situation internally, by beating themselves up for doing whatever happened. Blaming themselves is a way of beating our own self up. And so if I can embrace the abuser in myself and forgive that part and love that part of me, I will put a cover plate. I will no longer attract that to me. But remember, the universe is trying to show us us. So for some of us, including myself, I had to embrace kind of this evil, cruel, abusive side. And instead, or the victim, I always say, how many of you victimize people with your victimness?
Oh, that's good.
Because we are the victim and we are the victimizer. We are the abused and we are the abuser, whether we're doing it to ourselves or others. And when we can embrace that part and dialogue, and that's why the dialoguing is so important. I mean, if you're going to read the book, get a tape recorder and do the processes, because that's what's going to heal you. Information is the booby prize. Most people in recovery have read too many books and listened to too many tapes. Information just, it makes you feel good for a moment. Oh, I got it. But you've got to go inside. You've got to know yourself. To know yourself is to know God. To love yourself is to love God, or to love God is to love yourself. They go hand in hand because we have God within us. So I was emotionally abused my whole life. I turned it into a blessing, and that's our job. Thank God for every horrible, rotten thing that ever happened to me. Thank God, because that's who made me who I am today, and I love who I am today. But when I wasn't okay with who I was, and I wasn't living up to my potential, then I had to stay stuck with blaming and pointing my finger. And if you're still there, it's only because you're not living up to your bigness. Find your bigness, and you will find God. You will find yourself.
Well, that was really beautiful, very articulate, and a perfect way to end the interview. Since we're out of time, you have been listening to Debbie Ford, who does facilitate the shadow process, which you may be interested in, and I'll give you her number in 1 second, and also about her book, which is excellent, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, Reclaiming Your Power, Creativity, Brilliance, and Dreams. You can reach Debbie by calling 619-699-8999, 619-699-8999.
I also have a website, which is www.fordsisters.com.
Ford Sisters, I love it. So this has been Choosing Life, and this is a public affairs presentation of B98.5 FM. I'm Suzi Marsh, a licensed psychotherapist from the Alliance Center.